You've been pestering me for this, and it's about to drop. The complete jockeying tutorial that I promised you last week. Let's delve into it. First of all, we need to delve into what not to do when jockeying. Now, this is where people stuff up when it comes to the controls on their controller. You must not hold R2 by itself when attempting to jockey in EAFC 24, otherwise you will be more inclined to overcommit way past the attacker. And you must not hold L2 by itself, simply because it is too slow to react to the opponent. Now, there are situations where L2 by itself actually does come in handy when it comes to jockeying and lining up with attackers. That will be coming up very shortly in this tutorial. But what I want to say is, the jockeying technique with the controls that you want to focus on utilizing this year is L2 and R2 together at the same time, which activates speed jockey. It's a lot quicker, and since the patch which EA increased the reactions of your defenders when it comes to jockeying with L2 and R2, I have found it has become a lot better when it comes to reacting to your opponents. Now, into the nitty gritty stuff. I want to talk about left stick jockeying. You're probably thinking, but hang on a second. Didn't you just say in the previous segment that you must jockey with L2 and R2? Absolutely. But what I'm referring to is your movement on the left stick when it comes to lining up defenders. Too often people are too aggressive on the left stick with their thumb when it comes to attempting to line up defenders with attackers. Unfortunately, if you're too heavy, you'll be more inclined to overcommit even when you're using L2 and R2. You need to be minute on the left stick movement when it comes to lining up defenders. You may be heavy in approaching them, but once you get close to them, it needs to be minute. And you know how the controller clicks? You don't want that. You want it to be light and minute on the touch with your thumb, which then allows you to line up defenders a lot better. Now, there are techniques to line up defenders with attackers, which I'll be getting into later on in this tutorial, but you must be light, minute on the left stick when it comes to your thumb and caressing it. How to jockey in one-on-one situations. Now, you're going to find yourself in many one-on-one situations, and there are going to be various techniques I'm going to teach you very shortly when it comes to this. The first one is resetting to line up in EAFC 24. What do I mean by this? When you approach an attacker on the ball, they are inclined to do something, whether it's a dribble, a skill move, or a pass. But a lot of the time they will hang on to it, okay, and they'll attempt to beat you when it comes to you jockeying and attempting to defend against the attacker. What you need to do with this technique is you need to approach, then reset, which is a back off, and then you approach again. So you're essentially enticing them to do something. You're approaching, they then do a dribble or a skill move, and as they're doing that, you're backing off purposely, and that gives you more time to read where they're going to go and gives you more time to then line up the tackle. So you approach, you back off, and you approach again, and this is all with L2 and R2, the speed jockey technique. You may want to hold sprint to actually approach the attacker on the ball initially to get there. Then it's L2 and R2. Approach, back off, buy yourself some time, and then react to where he will go. This is the resetting to line up technique, and it's very effective, quite advanced, but very good for you guys to line up tackles. Pouncing on your opponent. I love this technique because people sprint way too much in every FIFA, aka EAFC, and I take advantage of it, aka pouncing on the opponent. What this entails is you guys jockeying in a hole, okay? So you're in a space, in a hole, and controlling one of your defenders. You're then waiting for your opponent to take a large touch and waiting for your opportunity to pounce on that large touch. And usually this comes when they're sprinting. And what you need to realize is when an opponent sprints, they don't hold R2 for a split second and do one little burst of a sprint and then stop. Usually it's 2 or 3 bursts, and I'm talking about touches when it comes to holding sprint. You need to start and read when the opponent starts to sprint, and then on the second touch, as he gets on the end of the ball from the first sprint initially, that's when you want to release. L2 and R2 when you're sitting in the hole, you want to hold R2 and you want to pounce on the opponent. This allows you to win the ball back when people are, let's say, lazy in the attack and they're trying to sprint through space. You let go of L2, you hold R2 and you pounce on the opponent and he will be taken off guard. Covering passing lanes. Now this is important because I feel as though EAFC 24, as you would have seen in my complete defending tutorial, is more about passive defending rather than aggressive defending. Because as we know, if there's a slight gap or space in the defense and you leave that open, it is so easy to exploit this year that you can't react with jockeying. Because I will say, jockeying isn't the greatest compared to previous years. It's still relatively slow post-patch even, and you're not able to react. So it's so important that you're sitting in the holes and you are covering passing lanes. But what I will say is, when you are doing this, you need to push up slightly every time you select a new defender. You're holding L2 and R2, you're sitting in the holes and you're attempting to cut off passing lanes, but you still need to push up slightly to put a bit of pressure onto the ball carrier. If you're just going to sit back and cover passing lanes, it isn't going to help you. You need to hold L2 and R2, you need to sit in the holes, but you need to push up slightly to put a bit of pressure on him and then maybe switch off to the next defender. Push up slightly, and it's a constant process of this to force the opponent to do something and to force him to make a pass. A zigzag jockey technique. My goodness, what a technique this is. I did keep this secret in my academy, but it was leaked. So I thought, you know what, the community already knows, let's deconstruct this technique. People have trouble lining up tackles, as we established at the start, with their left stick movement. To actually increase your ability and improve your ability to line up defenders, start making zigzag movements on the left stick. So you're quite light and minute on the left stick movements, but you're going back and forth like a zigzag. And what this does is it allows you to not only line up the defender and go too far past a side, because if you're just holding to one direction, you're more inclined to take the defender that way and overcommit. But if you're constantly moving your thumb back and forth in a zigzag motion, you're able to line him up with that attacker and prevent yourself from overcommitting. The other thing it does is keep your thumb ready to react to the opponent. Because as we know, if it's still or it's pointing in a certain direction solely, then your thumb won't be ready to essentially react to where the opponent will go. But if it's constantly moving, it's almost as though your reflexes are ready to go boom, straight to that side and react to the opponent to get the tackle in. It's a very effective technique and you guys should use it. L2 to stabilize. As I said, as a disclaimer at the start, L2 by itself isn't the greatest, but it is a good trigger to use if you're wanting to stabilize a defender from when they are sprinting hard in a certain direction. Because as we know, if you're sprinting and you want to stop on the spot, it's very hard to do if you are holding just R2 and attempting to jockey against an opponent. You will overcommit. If you hold L2 and R2, what that does is it does stabilize you, it brings you back, but it's slower to actually make the defender stop on the spot and turn around to jockey. But if you use L2 to stabilize, what this does is when you're sprinting along with R2, you can let go of R2, hold L2 to stabilize, and then back onto the R2 button with L2 and R2 together after you've stabilized the defender. And then you're able to obviously jockey, line up the defender with the attacker, and then get that tackle in. So it can be useful to stabilize, but I wouldn't use it as the sole technique of jockeying in EAFC. Defending skill moves. Now this is actually rather similar to the approach, back off, and approach technique. When you go in for a tackle and then you do the back off technique and then approach again, the actual initial back off causes the opponent to do a skill move because the initial approach makes him do something. And a lot of the time that will be a skill. And what you can do is you can approach, you can then back off and then approach again as he performs that skill move, and that allows you to react to him and get the tackle in. It also buys you time because we don't know what skill move your opponent's going to actually perform in times when you're jockeying. So you need to buy yourself time with that. And the approach, back off, and approach technique allows you to do that. Keeping the shape and the position. Now this incorporates right stitch switching, I will admit. And if you haven't watched my complete right stitch switching tutorial, it is a gold mine. I can't believe half the stuff I release on this channel. Compared to other channels, yeah, no comment. But what I will say is, please watch that, because it will deconstruct how to right stitch switch, which is a very key component to this segment. Keeping the shape and the position of your formation and jockeying in the position. This incorporates the push-up technique like I mentioned before, right stitch switching and jockeying. What you want to do is continuously switch between your defenders as they are jockeying in the space. You want to hold L2 and R2 as you're doing this, and essentially what you want to do is continue to switch between them and push up slightly. What this does is it forces the opponent to do something whilst keeping the shape and structure of your defense and your formation, because as I established with you guys, if you leave a gap or space, it is so easy to exploit. So we need to minimize that, but we still need to put pressure onto the opponent when we're jockeying. So you need to switch constantly between your defenders, keep them in their position, push up slightly with L2 and R2, and essentially put pressure onto the opponent. Lo and behold, the seal out technique. I don't think it would be a complete jockeying tutorial without this. Now there was some debate at the start of the AFC of what was more effective, tactical defending or advanced defending. Now I did a video comparing the two, and we established that advanced defending was in fact better in terms of what you were going to select in your settings for defending. With this setting, if you happen to hold X or tap X, what it does is it lines your defender up with an attacker, and they will jockey and get their body on the line and put their body on the line. They will get themselves in between the attacker and the ball so that they can get the ball and intercept it from the attacker's feet. You can also incorporate the seal out technique with the tackle button, because if you tap X, and then as he gets close from lining up, jockeying and pouncing on the attacker, you can then press circle or B if you're on Xbox to get the tackle in. So the seal out technique incorporates you pressing X and then circle straight afterwards as you get near that attacker. And why it's so effective is because, as I established, jockeying is not as good as previous years. It is harder to react a lot of the time, unless you're using the certain techniques which I've taught in this tutorial. But what I will say is it is harder compared to previous years. And what seal out does is it minimizes the effort to line up the defender. You still need to use certain techniques to actually get yourself into the position to get yourself where you can actually use a seal out technique. But if you press X, it will line him up as you're jockeying, and then you can tap circle. Then that brings me to a certain technique which I've discovered since recently playing this game quite a bit, and I found it on stream. If you're just holding X, which is basically contain, you then will line up the defender with the attacker, and from there he will get the tackle in. But why this is effective is because you can use jockeying at the same time. You can use L2 and R2 at the same time to hold the position, and as you're doing that, hold X. This will help you again line up the defender with the attacker. It's a cheat code. It's almost as though you don't always need a zigzag technique when it comes to using seal out, and I say always because you still need it to line up and get the defender in the position to do the seal out technique, as I mentioned before. But what I will say is, if you hold L2 and R2, keep the position, zigzag towards the attacker, and then hold X as you're approaching, it will help you line up. It's almost as though you're using the AI to help you jockey and line up the defender when going in for a tackle. It's very effective, and it basically helps you jockey on a whole this year in the AFC. So there you have it, a complete deconstructed jockeying tutorial for EAFC 24. Lads, smash the like button. These videos take effort and it's free. And subscribe if you haven't. It's our year 100k subs, inshallah. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because I'm dropping tutorials day in, day out throughout the year where you can learn from me, a pro. And you can get better at this game. I'm coaching one-on-one on patreon.com. If you want to be a part of that, which there is a free tab as well, you can check that out. The link is down below. But I'm out. Sayonara, au revoir, adios, salam, ciao, goodbye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then I'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. And lastly, if you do want any pre-gaming fuel or supplement, then head over to atpscience.com, which is the first link in the description, and use the code DylanEtsATP at checkout to get yourself a discount. Not only is it the cheapest way to get supplements, but it helps me out a ton, guys, so thank you.